You may be feeling vulnerable right now, exposed to dangers you can't see or control. Perhaps you're facing threats, physical, emotional, or even spiritual, that seem overwhelming. In times like these, it's easy to feel alone and unprotected, as if you're walking in a storm without shelter. But let me tell you something important. God is your shield, your fortress, and He never leaves you to face these dangers on your own. His protection is with you, whether you see it or not, and by the end of this prayer, you will feel the comforting peace of knowing that God has already surrounded you with His divine protection. Imagine standing on the edge of a battlefield, not knowing where the next attack might come from. You can't see the enemy, but you feel the tension, the danger lurking nearby. In those moments, fear can take hold of your heart. But even on this invisible battlefield, you are not defenseless. God is your protector, placing His strong and unbreakable walls around you. Just as a castle stands firm against enemy forces, so too does God's protection stand between you and every threat that comes your way, guarding you with His mighty power. We often feel most afraid when we are unsure of the dangers ahead. Maybe you're dealing with a situation where the outcome feels uncertain and the risks seem high. But even in the face of the unknown, God promises to be with you. His word in Psalm chapter 46, verse 1 says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." He doesn't abandon you in times of need. He draws closer. Today, as we seek His protection, we will call upon Saint Michael the Archangel to intercede for us. Saint Michael is known as the leader of God's armies, a protector who stands against evil, and through his prayers, we will be fortified with God's divine shield. This prayer is an invitation to trust fully in God's power and love. No matter how dangerous the situation you're facing may seem, God is greater. His hand is always upon you, and with Saint Michael's intercession, we can face every danger, knowing that we are never alone. As you join in this prayer, feel the fear begin to lift from your heart, replaced by the assurance that God is with you, protecting you from every harm. Trust that, through this prayer, you are surrounded by His heavenly shield, and no weapon formed against you shall prosper. When danger seems to close in from all sides, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed. The world is filled with uncertainty, and sometimes it feels like we're standing on shaky ground, unsure of where to turn for safety. But as believers, we are given a divine refuge, a place where we can find peace and security, no matter the dangers we face. God Himself is our refuge, a strong fortress that cannot be shaken. In the Psalms, we are reminded again and again that God is our shelter. He is not only a source of protection, but a place where we can run to find safety and strength when everything around us feels chaotic. In Psalm chapter 46, verse 1, we find these comforting words. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. This is a promise that reaches beyond time and circumstance. It tells us that in every danger, God is immediately present with us, not distant or unaware. When we feel threatened, whether by circumstances or by unseen spiritual forces, we are invited to turn to God, to run into His arms where we will be shielded and safe. His protection is unshakable. Nothing can break through the walls that God has built around His children. Imagine being caught in the middle of a storm. The winds are howling, the rain is pouring down, and you feel exposed to the full force of the storm. Then suddenly you find shelter, a strong, unbreakable structure that shields you from the storm's fury. This is what God offers us every day. He is the safe place where we can hide when danger threatens. No matter how violent the storm, His protection surrounds us, and within His shelter, we find peace. But God's protection doesn't just cover physical dangers. He is also our refuge when we are spiritually under attack, when doubts and fears threaten to overwhelm us. He stands as our strong tower, as mentioned in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. When we call on His name, we enter into that tower of safety, where no harm can reach us. We are safe from the arrows of doubt, from the weapons of fear, and from the enemies that seek to destroy our peace. Saint Michael the Archangel, we call upon your intercession to protect us as we seek refuge in God. Help us to trust in the strength of God's protection and to remember that we are always safe within His arms. Stand with us in the battle, defending us from every spiritual and physical danger. Guide our hearts to always seek shelter in God, trusting that He is our eternal fortress and no harm can befall us when we are under His protection. As we continue to trust in God's protection, let us be mindful of the peace that comes from knowing that we are never alone. God is with us as our refuge, our fortress, and our strength. He watches over us, providing safety from every danger, both seen and unseen. With this assurance, we can walk boldly through life, knowing that no matter what comes our way, we are secure in His love. Not all dangers are visible. Often, we find ourselves facing threats that we cannot see, but can deeply feel. There are times when we sense the presence of something dark, something harmful, lurking just beyond our sight, yet very real in its effect on our lives. These are the invisible enemies that come against us spiritually and emotionally. In moments like these, we need to remind ourselves that God is not just a protector of our physical being. He also shields our hearts, minds, and spirits from forces that we cannot fight on our own. The Bible speaks of these invisible forces in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This verse reminds us that many of the battles we face are spiritual in nature. These enemies don't show themselves in the form of physical attackers, but manifest in ways that can unsettle our spirits, harm our relationships, and even shake our faith. Yet, God's protection extends over these realms as well. Imagine a person walking through a dark forest, not knowing what dangers lie in the shadows. But just as fear begins to creep in, they realize that a wall of light surrounds them, a protective barrier keeping every hidden threat at bay. This is how God's protection works in the spiritual realm. Though we may not see the enemies we face, God does, and He places His shield between us and those threats. He sees the hidden dangers and stands ready to defend us from anything that would harm our souls. Sometimes, these spiritual attacks come in the form of deep anxiety, fear, or confusion. We may feel weighed down by invisible burdens, unsure of where these feelings are coming from, but knowing that they are keeping us from peace. In these moments, we must trust in God's promise of protection over not only our bodies, but our hearts and minds as well. Philippians chapter 4, verse 7 reminds us that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is the divine protection that keeps us safe from invisible dangers, covering us with peace that drives away fear. Saint Michael the Archangel, mighty defender against the forces of darkness, we ask for your intercession in our battles against invisible enemies. Stand as our protector in spiritual warfare, guarding us from the attacks of the enemy that we cannot see. Help us to trust in God's promise that He will shield us from all harm, both visible and invisible. Strengthen our faith so that we may stand firm, knowing that God's protection covers every aspect of our lives. As we continue in this prayer, let us find comfort in the knowledge that even the dangers we cannot see are no match for God's protection. He watches over us, shielding us from the forces of darkness that seek to harm us. With Saint Michael's intercession and God's shield around us, we can face the unseen with confidence, knowing that we are always protected by divine power that is far greater than any enemy. One of the most powerful tools God has given us for protection is faith. Faith is not just a belief we hold in our minds. It is a shield that we carry into every battle, a defense that can withstand even the most ferocious attacks. Faith acts as a barrier, protecting our hearts and minds from fear, doubt, and the fiery darts of the enemy. When we trust in God, that trust becomes a shield, and with it, we can walk through the most dangerous situations with confidence, knowing that we are under divine protection. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16, we are instructed to take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. The shield of faith is not just symbolic. It is a very real defense against spiritual dangers. When the enemy tries to throw doubt, fear, or temptation our way, it is our faith that blocks these attacks, extinguishing their power before they can take root in our hearts. Faith doesn't mean we will never face challenges, but it does mean that, when challenges come, we are equipped to withstand them. Picture yourself standing on a battlefield, arrows flying from every direction. It would be easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel as though you could not possibly stand against such an attack. But then you lift your shield strong, unbreakable, impenetrable. Every arrow that comes your way is stopped, unable to reach you. That is what faith does. When fear tries to take over, faith blocks it. When doubt creeps in, faith holds it at bay. This shield is a gift from God, one that is always available to us when we place our trust in Him. Faith is not something we create on our own. It is a gift from God, strengthened by His Word and by our relationship with Him. The more we trust God, the stronger our shield becomes. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 tells us that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. This assurance is what makes our faith a powerful defense. Even when we cannot see how God will protect us, we can be certain that He is working on our behalf. Our faith is the evidence of this unseen protection, the confidence that God is with us, shielding us from harm. Saint Michael the Archangel, we call upon your intercession to strengthen our faith. Help us to raise our shield of faith high, trusting in God's promises and protection. When doubt or fear tries to invade our hearts, stand with us, reminding us of the power of faith to extinguish every fiery dart of the enemy. Guide us to walk boldly, knowing that our faith is an unbreakable shield, gifted to us by the one who never fails. As we continue to trust in the power of faith, let us remember that this shield is not something we carry alone. God is with us, fortifying our faith, strengthening our defenses, and ensuring that no attack can reach us. With the shield of faith, we can walk through any trial or danger, knowing that we are fully protected by God's unwavering love and power. There is great comfort in knowing that God does not leave us defenseless in this world. Not only is He our protector, but He also commands His angels to watch over us, guiding and guarding us in every moment. These divine beings, sent from God, are with us at all times, even when we are unaware of their presence. They act as messengers and protectors, standing between us and harm, ensuring that God's will for our safety is carried out. Among these angels is Saint Michael, the leader of the heavenly armies, who stands at the forefront of spiritual battles to defend us against the forces of evil. In Psalm chapter 91, verse 11, we are given this promise, "For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." This is not just a comforting thought, it is a divine reality. God's angels are constantly surrounding us, guarding us from both visible and invisible dangers. They are His messengers of protection, watching over every step we take. Though we may not see them with our eyes, we can trust that they are always near, working to keep us safe according to God's plan. Imagine traveling on a long, treacherous road, not knowing what lies ahead. The path is uncertain, and danger seems to lurk around every corner. But as you walk, you are not alone. A host of angels surrounds you, walking with you, guiding your steps and keeping you safe from harm. This is the reality of God's angelic protection. His angels are with us in every journey, guarding us from accidents, missteps, and threats we may never even be aware of. Their presence is constant, ensuring that we are always under God's protective care. The role of angels in our lives goes beyond mere protection. They are also intercessors, bringing our prayers before God and acting on His behalf. In Daniel chapter 6, verse 22, we see an example of this when Daniel is thrown into the lion's den. He later testifies, "My God sent His angel, and He shut the mouths of the lions." This powerful story reminds us that God's angels are capable of protecting us even in the most dangerous of circumstances, whether physical or spiritual. They act with God's authority, ensuring that His protection reaches us when we need it most. Saint Michael the Archangel, commander of God's armies, we ask for your intercession and protection. Surround us with God's angels, that they may guard every step we take. Stand with us in times of danger, defending us against all forms of evil, both seen and unseen. Help us to trust in God's promise that His angels are always near, watching over us and ensuring that we are kept safe in His care. As we move forward in this prayer, let us find peace in the knowledge that we are never alone. God's angels surround us, and Saint Michael stands at the head of this heavenly army, ready to defend us against all harm. With the angels by our side, we can walk through life with confidence, knowing that we are always under the divine protection of God's heavenly messengers. There are moments in life when danger feels imminent, pressing in from all sides, and we feel as though we are standing on the brink of disaster. In these times, trusting God can feel like a leap into the unknown. The natural response is fear. Our instincts tell us to run, to panic, to take control of the situation ourselves. But it is in these very moments, when everything seems most uncertain, that God calls us to trust Him more deeply. His protection is not something that disappears when the situation becomes critical. On the contrary, it is in the most dangerous situations that His power shines the brightest. The Bible is filled with stories of God's people facing impossible odds and dangerous situations, only to be rescued by His mighty hand. One of the most powerful examples of this is found in Daniel chapter 6, verses 16 to 22, when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. He faced what seemed to be certain death, Yet Daniel trusted in God's protection. God did not remove Daniel from the danger, but instead, he sent his angel to shut the mouths of the lions. This story shows us that even when we are surrounded by danger, God is more than capable of delivering us from harm. In your own life, you may be facing a situation that feels just as dangerous, just as hopeless. Perhaps it is a physical danger, a serious threat to your safety, or maybe it is an emotional or spiritual battle that feels overwhelming. It is natural to feel fear in these moments, but God calls you to rise above that fear and place your trust in Him. He is with you, just as He was with Daniel. He sees the danger you are facing, and He is already at work, preparing a way of escape, even if you cannot yet see it. It is important to remember that trusting God does not mean we will never face danger. Daniel was still thrown into the lion's den, but his trust in God's protection remained unshaken. Trusting God means believing that no matter what dangers we encounter, He is greater than those dangers. He is the one who controls every situation, and He will not allow any harm to come to us that is outside of His plan. As we walk through dangerous situations, our faith becomes our lifeline, connecting us to God's strength and protection. Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we face the dangerous situations in our lives. Help us to trust in God's protection, even when the danger seems overwhelming. Stand with us, guarding us from harm, and guide us to rely on the strength and power of God. Remind us, like Daniel, to have unshakable faith in God's ability to deliver us from even the most perilous circumstances. As we continue in this prayer, let us find peace in the knowledge that God's protection is not limited by the size of the danger we face. Whether we are surrounded by lions or facing other threats, God is more than capable of keeping us safe. With Saint Michael's protection and God's strength, we can trust that no danger is too great for our Lord, and His hand will guide us through every trial. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we face in times of danger. It can grip our hearts, cloud our judgment, and even paralyze us into inaction. But fear, though natural, is not from God. In fact, fear is one of the tools the enemy uses to keep us from fully trusting in God's protection and love. When we allow fear to control us, we lose sight of the fact that God is bigger than any danger or threat we may face. He is not only capable of protecting us, He is eager to do so, because He loves us deeply. The Bible speaks directly to the issue of fear in 2 Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. This verse is a powerful reminder that fear does not come from God. Instead, He gives us power, the power to stand firm in the face of danger. He gives us love, the love that drives out fear, as 1 John chapter 4, verse 18 tells us, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. And finally, He gives us a sound mind, the clarity and peace that come from trusting in Him. Perhaps you are facing a situation where fear has taken hold of your heart. It may feel as though the fear is overwhelming, as though it is controlling your thoughts and actions. In these moments, God invites you to give that fear to Him. He knows your fear, and He understands it, but He also wants to replace it with His peace. Fear may be strong, but God's love is stronger. When we turn to Him, He fills our hearts with the peace that surpasses all understanding, as promised in Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. Consider the story of the Israelites at the Red Sea in Exodus chapter 14. As the Egyptian army bore down on them, they were terrified. But Moses spoke words of faith to them, saying, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." The sea parted, and they were delivered from their enemies. God didn't allow fear to have the final word in their story, and He won't allow it to have the final word in yours either. Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we struggle with fear in the face of danger. Help us to release our fear into God's hands and to trust in His perfect love and protection. Stand with us as a guardian, driving away the fear that seeks to paralyze us, and help us to walk forward in faith, knowing that God is with us in every situation. Remind us that we are not alone, and that God's love is greater than any fear we may face. As we continue in this prayer, let us be reminded that fear has no place in the heart of a believer. With Saint Michael's guidance and God's love, we can let go of our fear and trust in the protection of the One who watches over us. His perfect love casts out all fear, and His strength surrounds us like a shield, keeping us safe in every situation. One of the most comforting truths in Scripture is that we do not have to fight our battles alone. In fact, many of the battles we face are not even ours to fight. God, in his infinite power and love, takes on the role of defender and warrior on behalf of his children. He knows the dangers we face, both seen and unseen, and he steps in to fight for us, ensuring that the outcome is always within his divine plan. When we feel overwhelmed by the challenges and dangers of life, we must remember that God is on the battlefield with us, fighting to protect and deliver us. In 2 Chronicles, chapter 20, verse 15, the prophet Jahaziel speaks God's words to King Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah as they face a vast enemy army. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. This powerful reminder is one that we can hold on to in our own lives. The challenges we face may seem insurmountable, but God has already claimed victory over them. We are not left to fight on our own strength. Rather, God invites us to trust him and allow him to fight on our behalf. Think about the story of David and Goliath, found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. David, a young shepherd boy, faced a giant that no one else dared to confront. While everyone else saw an impossible battle, David saw an opportunity for God's glory to be revealed. He famously declared to Goliath, "The battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 47. With nothing more than a sling and a stone, David defeated the giant, not because of his own strength, but because he trusted in God's ability to fight for him. In our lives, we often face giants that seem too big to overcome, whether they are physical dangers, overwhelming obstacles, or spiritual attacks. It's easy to feel small and powerless in the face of such challenges, but like David, we must remember that the battle is the Lord's. He is more than capable of defeating any giant we face. Our job is not to conquer the battle on our own, but to stand in faith, trusting that God is already at work, fighting for us. Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we face the battles in our lives. Stand with us on the spiritual battlefield, helping us to trust that God is fighting for us. Protect us from the temptation to rely on our own strength, and remind us that victory comes from God alone. When we feel overwhelmed by the challenges before us, guide us to stand firm in faith, knowing that God has already claimed the victory. As we continue in this prayer, let us find comfort in the knowledge that we are not fighting alone. God is with us, and he fights for us. With Saint Michael's intercession and God's power on our side, we can face every battle with confidence, knowing that the outcome is in his hands. No matter how great the challenge, we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. The name of the Lord is more than just a title. It is a place of refuge and safety. Throughout Scripture, we are reminded that the very name of God carries power, strength, and protection. When we call upon his name, we enter into his presence, and there we find the protection we need from every danger. His name becomes a strong tower, a place where we can run and be safe from every harm. There is no threat, no enemy, no danger that can break through the protection that comes from the name of the Lord. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10 declares, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe." This image of a strong tower is a powerful one. In ancient times, towers were built to provide safety and protection from enemies. They were high, secure, and impenetrable. When danger approached, people would run to the tower, knowing that inside its walls they were safe. The name of the Lord offers us this same protection. When we call on his name, we are running into a place of divine safety, where no enemy can reach us. Consider how often the psalmists called on the name of the Lord in times of trouble. In Psalm chapter 61, verse 3, David writes, "For you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the foe." David, a man who faced many physical and spiritual battles, knew that true safety was found not in his own strength or military power, but in the name of the Lord. No matter what enemies came against him, he knew that by calling on God's name, he was entering into a place of unshakable protection. In our own lives, we too can run to the name of the Lord. When we face dangers, whether they are physical threats, emotional turmoil, or spiritual attacks, we are invited to call on God's name and find refuge in his presence. His name is not just a word. It is a fortress, a place of safety that no enemy can penetrate. When we feel overwhelmed by fear or uncertainty, we need only speak his name, and we are reminded of his power to protect and deliver us. Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we call upon the name of the Lord for protection. Help us to remember that God's name is a strong tower, where we can find refuge and safety from every danger. Stand with us as we run to him, knowing that his name is greater than any threat we face. Guide us to trust in the power of God's name, and remind us that in his presence, we are always safe. As we move forward in this prayer, let us hold tightly to the truth that the name of the Lord is our strong tower. With Saint Michael's guidance and God's name as our shield, we can walk confidently through life, knowing that no danger can overcome the protection that comes from calling upon his holy name. In his name, we are safe, secure, and protected from all harm. God's protection covers every aspect of our lives, both spiritual and physical. We often think of protection as something that shields our bodies from harm, but God's care for us extends far beyond the physical. He is also deeply concerned with the protection of our souls, our minds, and our hearts. He watches over every part of our being, ensuring that both our physical safety and our spiritual well-being are secure in his hands. Whether we are facing a physical threat or battling spiritual forces, God's protection is ever present, guarding us from all harm. In Psalm chapter 121, verses 7 and 8, we are given this assurance: the Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. This is a powerful reminder that God's protection is not limited to certain situations or specific times. He is constantly watching over us, ensuring that both our physical bodies and our spirits are kept safe. His care is comprehensive, guarding every aspect of our lives, from the things we can see to the dangers we cannot. Think about the times in your life when you've experienced God's protection in both obvious and subtle ways. Perhaps there was a moment when you narrowly avoided physical danger, an accident, an illness, or a sudden threat. But God's protection may have also come in ways you didn't immediately notice. By shielding your mind from overwhelming fear, protecting your heart from despair, or guarding your spirit from spiritual attacks. His protection is always at work, even when we are unaware of it, covering every part of our lives with his grace and mercy. An excellent example of God's dual protection is found in the story of Job. In Job chapter 1, verse 10, Satan acknowledges the divine hedge of protection that surrounds Job, saying to God, "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has?" This hedge is not just a physical barrier, it is a spiritual one as well. God's protection over Job extended to his body, his possessions, and his spiritual life. Though Job faced trials, God never removed his protection entirely, demonstrating that he cares for our entire being, body, mind, and soul. Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we seek God's protection over every part of our lives. Guard us from physical harm and stand with us in spiritual battles. Help us to trust that God's protection covers both our bodies and our souls, and remind us that we are always safe under his watchful care. Guide us to seek God's protection in every area of our lives, knowing that his love surrounds us completely. As we continue this prayer, let us be mindful of the fullness of God's protection. He is not only guarding our physical bodies, but also watching over our hearts, minds, and spirits. With Saint Michael's intercession and God's hedge of protection around us, we can face every danger with confidence, knowing that every part of our being is kept safe by his powerful hand. We are shielded from harm in every way, by the one who watches over our lives both now and forevermore. Chapter 10. Gratitude for God's protection. Gratitude is the natural response to God's unceasing protection over our lives. As we reflect on the many ways in which God shields us from harm, both seen and unseen, our hearts should be filled with thankfulness. His protection is a gift that we cannot earn or deserve. It is given freely out of his great love for us. When we take time to recognize the ways God has kept us safe, we are reminded of his constant presence in our lives and his deep commitment to our well-being. Gratitude opens our eyes to see just how much God is doing to protect us every day. In Psalm chapter 91, verse 4, we read, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart." This beautiful image of God covering us with his wings shows us the tender care and protection he offers. Like a mother bird shielding her young from the elements, God surrounds us with his presence, keeping us safe from all harm. His faithfulness is our shield, a protection that is always with us, no matter where we go or what we face. When we stop to reflect on God's protection in our lives, we can see how often he has saved us from dangers we didn't even realize were present. Perhaps you have faced a situation where you felt a sudden sense of peace in a dangerous moment, or maybe you have experienced a close call where you narrowly avoided harm. These moments are reminders of God's protective hand, guiding and guarding us in ways we may not always notice in the moment, but are so evident when we look back with gratitude. Consider the story of the Israelites' journey through the wilderness. Time and again, God protected them, whether it was through parting the Red Sea in Exodus, chapter 14, or providing a pillar of fire to guide them by night. They faced many dangers along the way, but God's protection was always with them. In Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 31, Moses reminds the people, "There you saw how the Lord your God carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached this place. Like a loving father, God carries us through the dangers of life, ensuring that we reach the safety of his promised protection." Saint Michael the Archangel, we ask for your intercession as we offer our gratitude to God for his constant protection. Help us to recognize the many ways in which God has shielded us from harm, both seen and unseen. Stand with us as we give thanks for the ways he has kept us safe, and guide our hearts to remain always grateful for his unfailing care. Protect us from the temptation to take his protection for granted, and remind us to always trust in his faithful love. As we move forward from this prayer, let us carry with us the deep assurance that God's protection is steadfast and unbreakable. Whether we face visible dangers or unseen threats, his hand is always upon us, guiding, guarding, and surrounding us with his love. Saint Michael the Archangel stands by our side as a powerful protector, ready to defend us against any form of harm that may come our way. Through his intercession, we are reminded that we are never alone. Heaven's armies are at our disposal, shielding us from both physical and spiritual dangers. As you reflect on the words of this prayer, take a moment to lift up your own personal petitions for protection. Leave your requests in the comments below so that this community of faith can join you in prayer, standing together under the shelter of God's wings. Whether you are seeking protection for yourself, your loved ones, or those who are facing difficult circumstances, trust that God hears you and is already working to safeguard you. Remember, every time we turn to God in prayer, he listens. He never leaves us unguarded, and his protection extends far beyond what we can see. By sharing this prayer with others, you invite them into this space of divine security, helping to spread the powerful reminder that God is a fortress for all who trust in him. Please don't forget to subscribe to stay connected, so that we can continue praying together, growing in faith and seeking God's protection in every area of our lives. As you go through your day, remember that the Lord is your strong tower. His protection is unwavering, his love is endless, and with him, you are always safe.